Welcome to the Generation Elevation podcast, a conscious, connected platform for those who are ready to manifest their dream life. I'm your host, Elise Riley, a former PT, now motivational speaker, igniting empowerment and transformation all across the globe. Here at Generation Elevation, we are committed to bringing you the most inspiring guests who will share their stories, wisdom, and advice to help you progress closer to living a life of your own terms. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Elevation. Today's guest is a master life coach and international speaker with a passion for helping others achieve greatness in their lives. He is a Guinness World Record holder, national bodybuilding champion, and an ex-Special Forces and celebrity trainer. He has spoken on stages alongside Tony Robbins, Les Brown, Dr. Deepak Chopra, and Dr. John Demartini. John has coached Olympic athletes, professional sports teams, CEOs, multimillionaire business owners, military and service personnel, as well as thousands of other people through his life-changing events and programs. So, this guest is really special to me because he actually was quite a large catalyst into how I delved into this personal development space. And I actually started 2021 with a business course, and he came on and did a process on the group. And I remember after that process, my mind was literally just changed in the hour. And I remember messaging him and asking, where did you learn all this stuff? I need to know. And now I have the pleasure of working with him, and I'm super, super excited to have him on my podcast today. With that said, I would love to introduce to you John Templeton.
Hey, thank you for the intro, Elise, and it's good to be here with you.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for coming on today, John. I am super excited.
Yeah. I was going to say, I was waiting for your questions. You've got two questions so your audience can get to know me, but I'm super excited too. So.
Yes. Well, these questions are coming up right now. You're already jumping the gun. You're ready to go.
I am.
So for those that are listening, I'm sure you're probably wondering, who is John Templeton? So John, where did you grow up?
Like, where did I grow up? Where was I born?
Yeah.
Very, very, go back to the start. I was born in England, and I lived in England for 10 years, and I moved to New Zealand when I was 10 and went to sort of my later school there, and then moved to Australia when I was 27. I've been here now and I'm 35.
And so you're living on the Gold Coast now?
Yeah.
Cool. And what is it that you do? I know in your intro I spoke about you being a speaker and you're helping others achieve greatness in their lives. How did you really fall into that?
Yeah, do you want the short version or the long version?
Maybe the short version, and then we'll delve into the long version.
Well, I wasn't where I wanted to be in my life. I wasn't happy. On the outside, people probably thought I was sort of doing okay, but inside I was not. And I did a course, and I guess similar to you, during that course, I had like an activation of my self-belief and what I knew was possible for myself. And from there, that activation and that transformation, I wanted to share with other people. So I started to learn how that happened to me. I was like, I want to give that gift to other people. So that's where I really started. And I went and I studied hypnotherapy, and then, as most people do, neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy, and just went on and on with my certifications, and also just being around other people that were in the space, crushing it, doing as many events and courses as I can, reading tons of books. It all just went on from there. It was like the dam burst and personal development just took over my life.
That's literally how I felt when you did that. I'm pretty sure it was a simple Dickens process on us in the mindset, like the business group. And literally after that day, like all my limiting beliefs, like out the window. And I was literally like, I need to learn how to do this. And yeah, that's how you kind of introduced me into the hypno, the NLP space as well. So I'm sure those that are wondering, that are listening, what is NLP and hypno? Like, what is the point of that?
Well, the point of it is to create transformation in people's lives. What are they experiencing that they don't enjoy? What do they want to experience that they're not experiencing? Remember, everything, our reality is a reflection of what's happening inside. So using hypnotherapy or neuro-linguistic programming, we can change someone's inner reality, and that's going to change their outer reality. Hypnosis, hypnotherapy is ultimately putting someone in a brainwave. I'm sure you know this, but for other people that don't, putting someone into a brainwave where they're receptive to new ideas and they're not going to defend themselves or protect themselves. And so you can implant things that are going to benefit them into their mind, and then they're going to start thinking in a certain way, and then they're going to start acting in a certain way. Mm-hmm. So that's hypnotherapy. NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, they're the cells of our brain, neurons. Linguistic is language. So we're using language to program the neurons in the mind, rewire them in more effective ways. So both are ultimately doing the same thing, very closely interlinked, to complementary skills. And it's all about helping people sort of rewire their mind, new habits, new beliefs, all of the good stuff, so that they can live the life that they want and get away from the life that they're potentially currently experiencing that they don't want.
And that's why I also do hypno and NLP myself, because that is literally the basis of this podcast, is to show people that you can create the life that you want. So I wanted to delve into your story, but before we do that, you mentioned that your inner reality is reflected back to you through your external reality. And I would love to touch on that as well, because that's something that I really believe in. However, for some people that are just delving into this personal development space, they may not really understand what that means.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, let's use an example. If you are in a relationship and maybe it's not fulfilling you, and you could be arguing with your partner, you could have needs that are not being met in your relationship. You might not feel loved. You might not feel understood. And so quite often we can blame the other person, like, you're not loving me, you're not hearing me, you're not understanding me. And whenever we're in a blame mentality, we can't really change anything, because we're expecting the outside world to change. And so really, that pain you're experiencing through not being loved or not being heard is that is a message for you, like a mirror for you to look back inside. And so changing the way you show up, you speak, you appear in the world. So when I say the outside world is like it's the outside world that is a reflection of the inside world. This probably wasn't a great example. If you don't believe you're worthy of a better relationship, then nothing in the outside world is going to change. You're going to stay in this toxic environment. If you don't believe that you can get a better job, if you don't believe any of these stuff, beliefs are just ideas or concepts we're attached to. If you don't believe that you can do any of those things are not going to drop in your lap. They're not going to manifest in your reality. And so there are some people out there that I was talking to some past clients yesterday, and I asked them, I was like, what did you believe was possible? And they said, there's a girl, her name's Carrie, and she said, I didn't believe I deserved to be married, to have kids, to be wealthy. And they did my 12-month program, her and her husband, Mikey. And then, so that was literally her belief system. When she turned up to a free event, it was a 2-day free event. She turned up and she had all these limitations, like, I don't deserve that. I don't believe that's possible for me. I interviewed him as well a couple of days ago, and he said the same things, that he said he didn't believe he deserved to have, money and all these things. Anyway, they worked with me for a year, and Carrie specifically said the contrast of where I was then to where I am now is just mind-blowing. So she had some sexual traumas and things like that and felt really unworthy. Now she feels totally worthy. She knows herself inside out. She took full responsibility for changing everything, and her outer environment is a reflection of it. During that 12-month program, she got married, she had a kid, and her husband bought a house. So all of those are reflections of internal changes that have occurred.
Wow.
That's a better example.
Yeah. And I think to add on that, it's almost like with the reticular activating system, when you have a belief on not feeling good enough, you're going to search your experience to prove that belief, to prove your bias. So switching the perspective to realize, oh, actually, I am good enough, and then searching your experience for reasons why that is.
Mm-hmm. That's
really
it.
And I'd love to delve into your story, John. I know I've heard it myself and it's pretty inspirational. So I'd love for the listeners to get a little bit about you and why you do what you do today. I know you mentioned that you weren't happy and you looked happy on the outside. I'd love for you to delve into that and how you got to where you are today.
I want to take you back before that. I was in the army and I was 20. I was in East Timor serving a 7-month operation, and I'll paint a picture of my life. In the military as a soldier, we drink Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You drink a lot of alcohol. You're surrounded by predominantly men, so very egotistical, very competitive environment. And it's all about who can sort of be the best, which is fine. I love competing. But back then I wanted a fast car. I wanted a sounds stereo system, big wheels, paint job, all of those things. Everybody in the military camp has who has the biggest TVs. It's all about that kind of life. And so that was the environment I was in. I went to East Timor, and because I couldn't really spend my money because I was in a foreign country, sleeping in a tent and eating, rationed food, I didn't spend any money. So when I came home, I wanted to buy I had a cool car. I wanted to modify it and make it the best in the whole military camp. So everyone was like, oh, there's John. He's cool. But I read a book. In East Timor called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, I wasn't into personal development at all. I was literally just this kid that wanted a fast car and to get a hot woman to date me, right? And I read that book and my whole mindset shifted. Talk about the inside world and the outside world. I read the book and my inner world changed. I went, wait a minute. If I buy a car, that car's going to cost me, $20,000, or if I modify my car, $20,000, it's going to become worth less and less and less over time, and it's going to cost me petrol money, insurance, all of these things. I was like, that is a liability. That's not going to give me a wealthy future. And so my inner world changed, and I went, okay, that's not a smart move, John. Don't do that. And the book said, don't buy liabilities, instead buy assets. That's the ultimate basis of the book. So I was like, okay, what's an asset? A house. I was like, okay, I'll buy a house. I had no idea what I was doing. I read the book, had this idea to buy a house, got back to New Zealand, went house shopping the same way you'd go shopping for a pair of shoes. I just went to the house shop and was like, hey, I would like to buy a house. And that's a real estate agent, by the way. And they showed me all the houses. And I was like, cool, what do I need to do? I had no idea. And they were like, well, you need to go and borrow some money from a bank. So they kind of pointed me in the directions, and I did it all. I ended up buying a house. And 3 months of owning the house, as you can imagine, we were partying every weekend. We were drinking. We were trashing the house, and it was my house. We had the police over, the military police over. I was doing a funnel. Do you know what a funnel is?
Oh, like a beer bong?
Beer bong. There was a policeman giving me a beer bong, and there's a photo somewhere of it. Anyway, the house got trashed, and I was sick of mowing the lawns, paying the bills. It was just too much stress. I wanted to go back to living simple. And so I went back to the house shop and I was like, I want to sell my house. I'm like, and they were like, well, you've only just bought it. And I was like, I want to sell it, get rid of it. And so I was like, I don't care if I lose money, I just don't want the stress anymore. And the house sold and I made $30,000 profit. For a soldier back then, that was like my salary for the year. So I was like, wow, I read one book, I made a different decision, and I just made 30 grand. That's when personal development really like entered my life. I took that $30,000, I reinvested it in another house, and I used, because I had the $30,000 plus the other money that I'd put in, so I reinvested in another house, and then I took a year out of the army and traveled around the world. And I just used that money to go all around the world to all the places I wanted to go. I went to America, I went to all of Europe, Egypt, Turkey, Greece, went and partied in Ibiza, like did everything I'd always dreamed of as a kid. And whilst I was traveling, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad 2, Rich Dad, Poor Dad Guide to Investing. I just went in, and that's where it all started. I was hooked from there, and I've just never stopped.
Wow. And so from there, how did someone from the army investing in houses and doing all that, reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, come to speaking on stages with Tony Robbins and Les Brown?
I mean, there's a big gap between then and then, but it's like a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right? And so it's just been step after step. But what happens is we all have limits. We all have what we perceive as possible. And so when I was still that guy, like I left the military in 2010 and I went into business. I opened my own gym. And even then, I had boundaries, and I want to call it your comfort zone, but it's not quite right. It's like the unconscious barrier, almost like a standard. I say standards are subconscious set points. So I had standards for myself, right? And they were like here. And those are my standards. You know what? I was training hard. I was eating well. So my standards in the context of health were pretty high. And I was a successful athlete. But then my standards in the context of, let's say, wealth were probably quite low. And so I had these subconscious set points and I was living equal to them, right? And we have to stop and question it and go, is this all I'm capable of, or am I capable of more? And that's what I continued to do. And then you go, well, I think I'm capable of more. And you set some targets and you go after them. And that's when, the Guinness World Record and things like that came into my life. I was like, well, what's actually true? Because right now you have a cap to your financial limits. People might say, oh no, it's unlimited. But your life is demonstrating where you're capped. If you're not a millionaire now, it's because you're not a millionaire. You know what I mean? So we have to stop and reflect and say, well, where am I actually capped? I could lie to myself, but my reality is reflecting back what's really happening on the inside. So where am I capped? And I started to go, okay, well, this is where I'm capped. And as a coach, when I became a coach, I remember doing my master practitioner training, and I was like, okay, I'm going to run my first group event and I'm going to have 10 people in it. And the people on the course were like, 10 people? That seems too easy. But to me, that was petrifying. I was like, 10 people? Like, where am I going to find them? And, how much it's going to cost? And so my event cost $1,000 per person. And they said, screw 10, go for 50. And so I had my standard of 10 being good. And the people running the course had a standard of 50. And so I was like, oh, wow. So I raised my standards to 50. Scared the shit out of me, put me way out of my comfort zone. My behavior and action had to raise like 10 bars, not just 1 bar. Anyway, I filled up that first event and I got 50 people in my very first event. And so again, that's just a reflection of our life is going to show us what we believe inside. I thought 10 people would be my limit. Obviously that was a limiting belief, as people would say. And so we just have to continuously check in and go, is that true? Is 10 truly your potential? And most of us are living beneath our potential. I'm living beneath mine now. You're living beneath yours too. We all are. And so we all know that sky's the limit and really nothing's impossible. So what is it that's blocking us? And I'm a big advocate of every single day looking at morning and night, looking at where I'm playing small, where I'm still holding myself back, and coming up with a strategy to break through that barrier.
Whoa, that is so powerful. I love that you've just said that. So then I'm sure everyone is wondering, how do you internally shift like that in-between strategy from going, okay, I'm going to have 10 people at my event to 50, or I'm going to be a 6-figure business owner, or to a 7? Like, what is that, the catalyst for that internal shift? Like, you ask, where am I playing small? But then what happens after that?
Nothing just changes overnight. We'll go back to the analogy. The 1,000-mile journey is step after step after step after step. Most people take 10 steps, don't see a change, and quit, right? Someone successful takes 100 steps. It hurts. It's not pleasant. You learn a lot of lessons. You fail, and then you take 100 more steps, and it kind of feels the same, and you just keep going and going and going and going, and eventually, like, the good news comes. So it's not, you reflect on it once and you change it and it's gone. With all habits, they're not just going to break instantly. They're going to surface themselves again, especially when you're not feeling great. Something happens in your life, gives you a blow. You might turn back to old habits. And so it is a daily process of rewiring the neurons in our mind through repetition and emotion. So you ask what happens next when you uncover this is where I'm playing small. There's a couple of things I'll say. One, your environment has a shitload to do with your standards. So if you grew up in, let's say, the slums of India, that's all you really know. You don't really know much more than that. And so it might be hard for you to gain the concept of being a billionaire. And so if there was a newborn child in the slums of India and you pulled them out and you put them into a billionaire's family and they grew up in the billionaire's family, they're going to have a totally different perspective on life, totally different beliefs. Their external environment will reflect that. So your environment is critical. If I wasn't on that course, I wouldn't have had 50 at my event. I literally wouldn't. Having accountability, having someone there to hold you to your potential is critical. Right now, I have 3 coaches. Okay, I've got a business mentor. I've got a content creation. I'm doing a content creation course, and I have my own, I want to say mindset, but it's like life and mindset coach. So they're going to see things that I can't see, and getting that feedback is everything. So your environment is going to massively shape who you are. And smart people surround themselves intentionally with people who are playing the game at a higher level. I don't say this to boast or anything, but all of my friends have far more money than I do. We're talking $100 million probably is my top friend. And then under that, there's a few around the 10 million. Yeah, around 10 million. Some of them own companies worth 150 million. So for ages, I was like, I can't compete with this. This is ridiculous. I feel so small compared to these people. But just by staying true to myself, and I can provide value, even though I might not be able to provide financial value for them. I was talking to one of them last night. He's probably worth about 5 million, but he's kind of missing purpose in his life. And that's something I'm really good at. So we went out for dinner and we walked on the beach and we were just talking about his direction in life and purpose. So I started adding value to them in ways that I could, and then they rub off on me in ways that they can. And so, of course, hanging around like people like that all the time, my standards financially are pretty high now.
I feel that 100%, especially like I also have 3 mentors, including yourself. And one of them the other day said, Elise, like if you are in a room full of people and you are embarrassed to say how much you're earning, you're in the right room. Mm-hmm. Because these people are going to stretch you. And that's just your ego that's like trying to protect you, right, from stepping out beyond that comfort zone, what you were saying before. But really, that I heard a quote the other day, I think it was from Rob Dial, on, when you go for a walk and you are either walking with a friend and you speed up to match their pace or you slow down to match their pace. And like, I know I want to be surrounding myself with people where I'm speeding up to match their pace because I don't want to get left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great analogy, and it's so important. A lot of people also ask, like, well, how do you get to meet those people? I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad way back in the army, and in the book he was talking about how do you find people with money? If you don't have money, he's like, find someone who's got a lot of money, come up with a brilliant business idea, and they'll give you your money. And I kept thinking, how do you even find these people? Now knowing how the universe works is like, you don't need to know how, you just need to do it, and the universe will provide them in the most magical, beautiful, mysterious, synchronistic ways. But what happened was, when I had my gyms, I had a gym and I borrowed the money off my mum to start the gym. So I borrowed some money off mum, started the gym, borrowed $30,000, right? Opened the gym, and it was going really well for a couple of years. And then two people I owned the gym with, they wanted to start another one. And so I was like, well, I've got no more money to put in. I can't do it. And I was really gutted. And then this lady who was a gym member, she was quite wealthy. She said to me, well, I'll lend you the money and you can pay me back. And I was like, whoa, like, where did that even come from? I was like, okay. So she did it. So she lent me the money. And it's like, I was expelled from school. My mum and stepdad who I lived with, they're smokers, drinkers, gamblers, not good financially at all. And when I thought, well, I'll never be able to hang around millionaires or anything like that, it does happen. If you just keep going, keep taking those steps, the people come out. They're there. The universe looks after people that are really a force for good and trying to do good things in the world and move forward. So yeah, this lady in the gym, to take that story and make it even crazier, her ex-husband, very, very wealthy. I ended up living with her because long story short, I was living at the gym because I couldn't afford to rent a house. So I was living at the gym. No one really knew. But she was a member at the gym, and she's like, hey, I live in this big house on the beach. Why don't you live with me? I was like, okay. So I'm living in this $1 million beachfront house with this lady. She's still a good friend of mine. And she lends me the $30,000, do all that. But then she moves. She's like, hey, I'm moving to a different part of the country. We were in Mount Maunganui, and she's like, I'm moving to Auckland. And so I was like, oh, okay, no worries. And she's like, but you're part of the family now, so I want you to live with my ex-husband. I was like, what? She's like, I've already talked to him. It's totally fine. His house is this massive French villa, 4 stories tall, like beautiful, on the beach, swimming pool, hot tub, sauna, gym, like wine cellar, everything. So anyway, I ended up living with him for a year. And then he's like, I'm moving out as well. Can you house sit? I was like, winning. So it's like, and obviously I had a lot of conversations with him around money and his level of, 2 boats, their level of wealth was insane, but it just doesn't matter where you start. If you're listening to this now and you just are like, oh, I'm a nobody, I have no hope, that is not true. That is absolutely not true. And anything is possible if you just commit to being the best version of yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Like if you're wanting to surround yourself with certain types of people, then becoming that vibration within yourself, that energy within yourself. So if you want to be around people that are focusing on money and being quite successful in business, then shifting your focus on your business and how you can grow, and you'll just naturally start attracting those people as well. And John, you speak a lot about the universe and especially like trusting the unknown in difficult times. I would love to, I guess, hear your advice, and I'm sure the listeners are curious as well, on how to just have full trust and, I guess, attract what you want even in those stressful times.
Well, this is something I've struggled with massively. Everything in my life screams control. Even the military is like, the opposite to trusting. It's like you're controlling the operation as much as you can, and you have strategies and plans and tactics all mapped out. And then I read about it all, and there was a book called The Secret, right? That's where I sort of heard about the law of attraction, and I read that in the military as well. And it was a great concept. I never really trusted. I understood the concept. And so what the universe does, it's got this great way of humbling you. Whenever you try and do it all yourself, you'll get slapped in the face. And through that experience, I realized I had to let go. And I'll tell you the first day I really felt the presence of divinity help me. I was doing a tour around Australia and New Zealand, coaching, running events. And I was in New Zealand. Do you know the story? You're like smiling.
I'm like so excited to hear it.
Okay. So I was in New Zealand and sales hadn't been going that well. We'd done 2 events prior, not made enough money. Flew to New Zealand and I had staff, so I was paying the staff as well, flights, accommodation, everything. Now we had so little money left for this tour that I hired us an Airbnb, and it was like this little caravan in someone's back garden. So you can imagine John Templeton, the personal development coach, running these events. We had about 30 people registered. And if people saw where I was sleeping, they would have been like, I'm not listening to this dude, he's useless. So there's this caravan. Me and my assistant were sleeping in the caravan. There was one bed. She was on the bed. I was on a mattress on the floor. And I was so stressed out, Elise, because the last events had not gone well, and I didn't have anybody guiding me. This is before I got a coach ever, okay? Another story altogether. But I remember that night going, well, what am I going to do? If I do the same thing I've done in the last 2 events, I'm going to fail again. And I just ended up crying. I was on the mattress on the ground. I just started crying, and I was like, this is just too hard. And I started saying, please help me. I was just like, please help me. And I started praying to God. And this is coming from like an atheist. When I was in the military, atheist, massively, but I was just like, I don't know what to do. I was like, help me, God. And I just surrendered and I let go. And I just said, I don't know what to do. And what happened was all of this insight just started entering my brain. It's like, well, what about this idea? What about this? I was like, oh, these are great ideas. Like, where are they coming from? Because if they weren't coming from me, because I wouldn't have had them, they were coming from outside of me. And so I started writing it down. And what I did, I pulled out my laptop in the end and I rebuilt my whole presentation. It was a 3-hour presentation. I rebuilt the whole presentation during the night. Did not sleep that night. When I say didn't sleep, I didn't sleep, but at some point I kind of fell asleep. But it was like, I don't really know what happened. All I remember is my assistant woke me up in the morning and I had my laptop open and I was like, whoa, the presentation was finished. And I was like, I don't even know what just happened. Anyway, got up, had a shower, got a suit on, went, did this presentation, and did $30,000 worth of sales in 3 hours. Most I've ever done. And everyone at the event was like, mind blown, what the fuck just happened? I was like, what the hell just happened? and it was crazy. We were flying home after that and I got really sick. My nose was like as if I tipped water out of this, it was just pouring out. And I had tissues stuck up my nose the whole flight home like this. And I was just writing, like, what did I do differently? What did I do differently? And I was just taking all these notes so I could reflect on it later. But that's the first time I'd experienced the divine give me information that I needed, right? And so I thought to myself, okay, I need to let go of control more. Did I? No. I had to learn the lesson again. So I tried again. I'm going to do this, all of the stuff. I'm going to do it all. Hit a wall again, crashed and burned, upstairs, just up here in a room, crying on the ground again, asking for help, praying to God. I get more insight and wisdom come through. And so I started to notice a pattern and going, okay, I'm better when I use this magic, when I use divinity. I'm better. I'm better at what I do. I put on a better service. I help more people. My life feels better. I don't have to do as much work. So I was like, I'm going to do this more often now. So it came from trial and error and learning. And this is how I like to explain it to people is I feel like the divine is like an octopus. Okay? Hear me out.
Yeah.
Imagine an octopus. How many legs does an octopus have?
8.
8 legs, right? Imagine if an octopus was trying to catch a crab to eat, but just used one leg. So an octopus had 7 legs behind its back, and one was like trying to catch the crab, and it couldn't do it. And it was like, oh, this is so annoying. And then the brain of the octopus would be like, well, do you want some help? Because I've got 7 other legs that can help you. And the one is like, nope, I can do it myself. And it's like, all right, whatever. And then it's like, finally, it's like, okay, I give up. I need some help. And then the octopus is like, okay, get some other legs in there, and they eat the crab. That's how I see God and the divine. And what I mean by that is not a real octopus, but energetically, we're all connected. Call it the quantum field, call it whatever you want. And picture like a cord of energy coming out of your head up into the sky, into a huge cloud of energy. And imagine you've got one, and everyone you know, everyone on earth is connected with this energetic cord up to the divine. So when you say, I need some help, that message goes up to the divine. And then there's someone else out in the world saying, I need some help. And the divine, this energy cloud goes, wait, John's a coach and this person's struggling. I'm going to make them meet each other somehow. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to make them meet each other. Okay? So it could be something random like, oh my God, I saw something pop up on Facebook, or a friend was mentioned you, or someone mentioned you were on a podcast, whatever it is, right? And I researched you and you were running an event and I turned up. That's how the divine works. That's how the giant octopus works. And if you do not trust the giant octopus, if you do not trust divinity, then you're like the one leg trying to do everything alone. And so as soon as you realize that you're actually connected to this big supercomputer that wants the best for all the children of Earth, once you realize you're connected to that supercomputer, start using it. Because it doesn't just help you, it helps the others. If you were a parent and one of your children was kind to another one, you would reward them, right? So if you are kind to someone else, the Heavenly Father is going to reward you. So use it to your advantage. It's real, and it's scientifically, if you've dove into quantum physics, it's all proven now with science. Like this octopus, this energy cloud, this field of energy, it exists and we can use it, and it's magical.
Yeah, 100%. Honestly, like, that is why I've created this podcast, is to, I guess, get people like yourself to come on and show others how easy it is to create your own life rather than living by default. And the law of attraction, how you mentioned before, it's always constantly working, whether you believe in it or not. What you focus on expands. And it's like this hustle, a stigma in the coaching industry or in any industry really, that you've got to work hard to be successful. And it's like you've got to do it all yourself. And coming from that stressful, like resistant energy, you're going to project that. And therefore, like, that energy is from a low vibration, that anger, that frustration. Whereas if you just let go and, like you said, surrender, then you're obviously going to be at a higher energy to that of which you want, and be more likely to attract that into your reality.
100%. That's it. That's it.
Oh, yeah. I love that you said that, John. That makes me like, yeah, I love it. I love it so much. That's something that I'm super passionate about. And I want to ask you one last question, because I want to be mindful of your time today. So before I do that, where can people find you? How can they find you and learn a little bit more about what you do?
Instagram's probably the best place, but you can find me anywhere with my handle at John Templeton Official. My New Zealand accent, it probably sounds like Templeton, but it's temple, like a castle temple, you know, John Templeton Official. And that's, Facebook, Instagram, my website.
Amazing. I'll put all the links for John's socials in the show notes, so be sure to check that out, everyone. And John, for the listeners, after every guest, I always ask them to, I guess, channel in one specific piece of advice that the listeners can take from this episode from you. And it doesn't have to be related to what we've been speaking about, and it also can be. However, one piece of advice that you believe will really benefit those listening today.
Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. And when you compare yourself to others, quite often you'll compare somewhere you're weak to their strengths, and that's going to ruin you. And so if you want to live authentically, which is where you'll be the most successful, which is where you will be connected to the divine, and the law of attraction will be working in your favor, is to be authentic. And the way to do that is to literally be yourself. And what that involves is recognizing where you are strong and where you are weak, and seeing that for what it is. And so you can't be the best at everything, but you can be the best at being yourself. And so stick to playing that game and aim to be the best you, because you're the only you on the planet. So that means you will be the best on the planet at being you. And when you do that, and you love every part of you, the good parts and the bad parts, that's when you'll be successful.
Wow, let that sink in, everyone. That is so powerful. Thank you so much, John, for jumping on my podcast, Generation Elevation, today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I loved it too. Thank you for considering me and having me on.
Thank you for being a part of the Generation Elevation community. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to leave a 5-star rating, written review, share, and tag me on Instagram at elise.riley. Until next time, keep loving, keep learning, and keep rising.